All right, hello, hello, hello. We're just loading into the match here, the guide, if you will. So, welcome, guys, to the second day of this guide. And I'm keeping it unedited for a simple reason of keeping it simple. Simple for me, easier for me to make these and all that. Although I'll probably do an edited one down the line. So, today, as I said, we're going to be talking about coalitions and all that. But, first off, we're going to talk about something a little important today, resource management. Now, this is something that I know a lot of people do struggle with early on. They'll make units, but they don't know how to manage their resources. So, today, we're going to think about our resources a little bit. So, there's something helpful here you can use for that, something called province administration over here. You click on this, and everything's still loading in, all the icons and stuff. But this menu right here is exactly what you should be using every time you're doing one of these. Now, what it does is it gives you the name of all your cities, their victory points, the resource they make, the money they make, the manpower, their morale, what you can construct, what you can produce, and if you want to rally units there after the build. You can also sort things by different buildings you have. So I only have barracks right now of a level 1. So that's all I can sort the cities by. But look at this and then look at your resources. So we have one metal city, one rare materials, one fuel, one energy, and one food. So we're balanced across the board. Some other nations, when you do pick them, they'll have, maybe they won't have a city that produces one of these. Granted, I don't know if that's a thing in this game, so I can't say it is, but some cities will have some nations will have an extra city, which can produce a second resource. Why does this matter? For example, let's say if I had another city as part of Cascadia, my country, my nation, my people, I would have two cities that produced metals if I had another one, ideally. Now that two cities that produce two cities that produced metals, hypothetically, you then want to look into your research and see, hey, what units take metals because you can sustain a metal-based army better than, let's say, a food-based army. Metal being vehicles and food being infantry doesn't mean you ignore the other side, it just means your army will be comprised of that unit. But for my nation, because I'm only making one of each, my army should be balanced across the board. Equal amounts metal, vehicles, equal amounts food, infantry. Of course, metals, when I talk about vehicles, that includes aircraft. That also can include naval craft, as long as any kind of different types of mechanized vehicles you might have. But now that's day 2, we can talk about support and aircraft. Support units. This is stuff that you will be using. Every match, you should be looking into getting at least 2 support units, in my opinion. You ideally want to get one of the artillery pieces, so you got the artillery, the anti-mech gun, or the siege mech, but that's locked until a later day, day 3 as we can see. So depending on who your neighbors are, what you can gather from the newspaper, and what you can gather from them being near your borders, it's like if they have a city on your border, you can gather, hey, they have these kinds of units or they're making these kinds of units. Now, day 2, it's going to be a little bit hard to tell. Generally around day 5 is when you can get a better feel for what people are generally going to be building. So because I don't know anything anyone else is building right now, I'm just going to make scout mechs. I'm going to get the research. I personally recommend everybody to at least get the first level of scout mechs. They are a bread and butter of every good nation. So this is a little bit more of a pro tip here. Scout mechs will be the bread and butter of your army because they allow you to see very far into people's territories and uncover hidden land units. They're good for that. I'll be honest, if you don't have a scout mech, then you're probably not going to be doing as well as someone who does. Aircraft. This is self-explanatory. You got scout discs, which are basically the air version of scout mechs. I don't use them though, because you need to make something called, I believe, a hangar, if I'm not mistaken, is what this game calls them. You have interceptors, you have bombers, harpies, and you got Zeppelin dropships and flying fortresses. These bottom two are a little bit more, actually no, these bottom three are a little bit more advanced. So you need to know is scout discs are scout for you. Interceptors will intercept flying vehicles like scout discs and bombers. And bombers, well, they bomb. Yeah. The reason you should be keeping an eye on these now is this is when you want to ideally think about what do you want to do. So for me, I actually want to move to a mechanized infantry, which I can only unlock on day 2, likely due to my capitalist thing. So I'm going to personally research mechanized. Now that I know I want them, I'll go down to a city here, and here's another pro tip. You can click on any of these units that you can produce, even if you can't produce them. So I want to do mechanized. You can then scroll down all the way to the bottom. It'll tell you exactly what you need to make them. It'll tell you the name of the unit plus their level, because that is what you research you need. On the left side, it will tell you all the buildings they need. So because I need mechanized infantry at level 1, I want barracks at level 3. Now, my resources are doing good across the board, except for steel or metals, really rare materials. So I am going to move to province administration, and I'm actually going to look for the rare metals city, which would be Seattle for me. And out here, using construction, I'm going to now look in the province economy area. Now, these three will be your bread and butter for different things. Power plants, they help you make units faster. This can be good if you got a great resource economy going. Industries, you should always get at least the first level of this in every single city you have, at least in your homeland. This right here gives you a 20% boost to money and resources. A lot of people don't build these, and it's a very big rookie mistake where they'll make a big army, they won't make industries, and now they can't make more of an army, and they actually start losing resources. So for now, I'm just going to build this on Seattle. Now, something you can do here on the left is you can actually click each of these check boxes, or you can do a dragon select like this. And then you can click on either of these two, the hammer or the production, and every available city can make the units. It'll tell you the overall cost. So I'm going to have all of my provinces, all my cities build units. That way, and this is very useful at the start of the game because you're always going to be likely to go for infantry first. So you can just drag every city. You can construct every city to have a barracks at once. And you can also tell them all to make that unit at once the barracks is done. It's a very useful tool to use. It saves time and it saves headache. Now that we have all that covered, let's look at our front reports. Okay, just all the buildings are made, our research is done. That's great. Now, as I said, quick hit on armies. Armies will tell you your brigades, your stacks, where they're at, what they're doing, speed, attack, and defense, protection. You can also do ID if you want, but just a quick thing, you can use that if you have a bigger army. I never use it though, because you can see your army right here in front of you. We will move up to something called coalitions. Now, if you don't feel like you can beat everyone by yourself, depending on the map, you can have coalitions of just between 2 people, and I believe up to 5 people. A coalition is just essentially a team. So we can see that we have 4 coalitions here, but 4 of them are full. So we got Texas and Hispanic Nueva Mexico, Mexico and Republic Rio Grande together, New England Republican and Federation League together, and we also got the Steel Belt Empire. Now, if I scroll out here, I'm actually going to scroll out so all of you guys can see this, of course, hopefully. And if you notice here, some of the nations have a green person icon below their nation's flag. That means if it's green, that means it's an active player. So I'm looking at all my neighbors. Russian America isn't a player. First Nation League is a player. Alberta Union's not a player, and so on and so forth. But the thing you want to keep in mind is who are my neighbors who are players? Because you can choose to ally with them, which would be more beneficial in the immediate short run, or you can choose to do it later on. So right now, I can see that to my south, the California Republic is active. Now, you do get some free info clicking on cities. Generally, it's just question marks on the cities. But as I recommend, you should look at each person's nation near you. When you click on them, you should look at each of their cities and see if they're actually building anything. So this guy down here isn't building anything, which is kinda sad, really. So now I'm going to move up to the First Nation League. Now look at their flag. It's blue, white with a red cross. Are they in a coalition? Yes, they are. They're in a coalition with the New England Republic. So that means I could maybe ask Mr. Lord Lysol, which is the player's name, for some help here. So now I'm going to try to message him. You want to click on the flag here. You then want to actually, or you can click on, I believe, the name. You can also send him a message, but first off, you can see some information there, which I kind of briefly skipped over. We'll let it pull up again here. But it's very important information. I think if you click info, it tells you their account level, their nation, their faction here, which we can get into at another time, their capital, how many units they have, how many provinces they control, how many kills, deaths, captures, and losses of territory they had in this match, how many countries are at war with, and popularity. Now, popularity is something very simple. If an AI nation, and this only affects AI, has a low popularity rating of you, let's say around 30% or below, they might embargo you. Now, that may not matter right now, but we can talk about the trade market in a second. But if it gets too low, like below, let's say about 15% or so, they might declare war on you because they don't like you and they deem you a threat. Now, going above coalitions, well, actually, let's create a coalition. So we're going to be called this the Guide Coalition, making a guide. So as you can see here, very simple coalition. We're going to just do random things here because we don't care about the flag, and then we're going to create it. So now we made it. Now we could do a newspaper asking a person to join. We could also just wait and see if someone joins us. Okay? But now I've done that, my score conditions have now changed. Now it's going to take more points because it's a team victory, even if I'm the only one in the team. But back to this. So I'm a little bit worried about that guy down there. I will actually see if I can pull him up, and I'm actually going to send him a offer. Now you might be looking at this menu and be wondering what you can do. You can actually send trade deals to other players through messages. So I'm now going to send a message. Hello, Lord Lysol. Would you be interested in joining my coalition? Now we're going to drop that on him. And now, just like me or you, he is a human, so it will take him time to respond. He could respond in the next 2 minutes, or he could respond in the next 2 hours. Because people from all walks of life, from everywhere on the globe on our planet, play this game. So you don't know if he'll respond. You don't even know if he'll speak English until he responds to you. That's just how it is. But messaging is such a great thing to do. It's under something called diplomacy. So diplomacy tells you everything you need to know. The faction, which only really affects your units, their relationship, their score, if they're AI or not, your relation to them. So if you're at peace, war, that kind of thing. You can also send them messages, but only to players, and you can also see their info. which for AI, I mean, you could send a message to AI, but unless the player takes control of it, they're not going to care. It's outside of trade deals. But here you can see Alberta Union, pretty good. So now, how do you know who to attack and when to attack? Now, this is something I see also a lot of new players struggle with. They won't make an army. They will just look at their nearest neighbor and think, hey, I'm going to full send my army. Full send meaning you send all of your units and your territory into another piece of land. That's one of the terminologies of this game. So, what I recommend you do is don't attack a big nation first. Attack a smaller AI nation. Every big nation you can control will almost always have a smaller AI nation near you that you can conquer and people rarely contest. As in, they don't want to take the land because they have another piece themselves. So, my example for me is I'm Cascadia. I could actually take the Duchy of Graham as my piece of land, but I want to be a little bit risky here, and I want to actually take the Rocky Mountains Republic. Now, I do have an artillery unit here, so I'm actually going to begin the war. Now, when you want to declare war or do a war, you can be aggressive and not do a declaration. Don't do that. That wrecks your popularity a lot with every single nation on the map. Instead, go to diplomacy, find them, then declare war. You will still take a popularity hit, but it will not be as dramatic as if you cross the borders without doing a declaration. It will save you in the long run, trust me. So we're going to do a declaration of war on the Rocky Mountains Republic. It'll take a second to kick in, but now you're in your first war at that point. So congratulations, you have now entered an AI war. You should know the basics of economy, such as just don't overspend, really. Make some units, but it could take a while for the declaration to kick in. After all, you are communicating with a server. Let me just double confirm that. But now we're at war. This territory should turn red, and I'm actually going to now move my artillery piece here to fire. Now, you do get, I think, only 1 or 2 per nation, so make good use of it. But we can see that the Rocky Mountains Republic is a very small place, but they have fuel. That is going to be useful for a nation like mine, because I do plan on potentially going for buildings. So now you have a few options here with units. Move, attack, and split. Splitting just means who are you going to send? You get to see a unit limit before they get nerfed, how much speed they have, and their damage. So for my nearby nation, not nearby nation, my nearby city of Portland, I'm just going to move most of my army out of it. Now, I'm actually going to use this to take the lands here of Joseph and McCall while my artillery does its work on Baker City. Now, there is some terrain things to talk about, but I will be talking about terrain tomorrow, since we are getting close to the end of the day 2 of your guide. But now, you figured out the basics of your army. At this point, you should also be thinking, what vehicle do I want? I think I'm going to go for a medium mech as well for my army. Now, let's scroll in here. If you notice, an enemy is actually moving up here, because if you see these dotted lines, which I hope you can, this is where your units can move. The dark black lines within your nation are just borders of the provinces. It's thicker for other nations so you can actually see it because it's on a gray background. Red is hostile land, and yellow is the active front line. So, all you need to know is that AI nations are easy to take care of if you don't rush. So I'm going to have my tank brigade. Now it's moving, you have way more options. All you need to know is that add target just adds another line for them to go through. Forced march makes them move faster, but they take damage, guys. You get 50% more speed for 5% of your overall health. So the bigger the stack, the bigger the hit that is. You can then split them up. You can also delay them so you can coordinate an attack to happen at the same time. So if I had like a bigger army, or if you get a bigger army, you can attack an enemy at several points at the same time thanks to the delay feature. But because this is going to be my premier unit, I'm actually going to want to move them through the bottom here, and then I'm going to take Bakersfield third. Now, you want to generally be somewhat passive with your wars. You don't want to be too aggressive at the start. Of course, this depends entirely on what kind of build you have. But to seal the deal, I'm also going to move units off of my capital. I believe Kalwan's my capital. I could be wrong. And I'm going to send them down here to Baker City to capture. But I'm not going to keep them on the city. No, no, no. Instead, I'm actually going to have them keep pushing down and take the fields and Vale, which, as we can see, thanks to our solitary scout mech we start with, we do have an idea that there's someone there, we just don't know who. But when doing war, try your best to tell where your enemy's weak at and where they're strong at, because you never know, right? You have no idea if what you're doing is going to be good or if it's going to be bad. You don't know until the war starts who you're facing, what they have usually. But tomorrow, we can talk about what do you do to potentially eliminate that knowledge not being known to you? How do you gain that upper advantage? So tomorrow, we will be talking about espionage, different types of terrain and their effects, and captured territory, ideally, and more information about how coalitions work. But for now, and also the trade market. But for now, keep in mind, pay attention to your resources, build your barracks or your starting infantry. Day 2, start thinking of what kind of army you want, or if you want bigger infantry, like motorized or mechanized. And then look at the nearest AI nation and declare war on them. Now, typically you want to do it on day 1, but you don't have to. You can also do it on day 2. As long as you typically take the AI nation within the first 3 days or declare war and take it, it's fine. But guys, that's going to be it for the second day of the guide. I hope you like this. I'm trying to keep it simple, although it's a little bit long. It is a day-by-day run-through. If you like it, stay tuned for more, because at least one of these will be dropped a day around the same time of 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But for now, I gotta go. Bye!